Welcome to a series of podcasts where I talk about all the albums I've never heard. Here I'll discuss as many legendary albums I can think of and give my thoughts and opinions on them. I'm your host, Erinn Rose, and without further ado, enjoy the show. A one-hit wonder, in the technical sense, is a band and/or an artist that cleared the top 40 of the Billboard Hot 100 no more than once. A one-hit wonder, as it's actually used, refers to a band and/or an artist known for only one song. There can be some conflict of interest here. For example, Don McLean is not a one-hit wonder in the technical sense, but is definitely a one-hit wonder for his song American Pie, as the general public pretty much knows none of his other songs. However, there can also be artists in the former category but not the latter. Artists who have had only one and in some cases no hits, but have had a massive effect on music as a whole. Think Jimi Hendrix, the Ramones, and the subject of today's episode, Radiohead. Radiohead has only one technical hit, and that's Creep. Creep was released in 1992 and takes a lot of cues from the then popular grunge movement. After Nirvana had released Smells Like Teen Spirit in 1991, the big rock movement was suddenly full of crunchy guitars, nonsensical lyrics, and layered sounds. Creep ticks most of the grunge boxes nicely, an intense guitar, mumbled lyrics, a soft verse, and a loud chorus. However, after the release of Creep, Radiohead was slated to go in a very different direction. They released their album, The Bends, and were on tour when they were asked by Brian Eno, one of the godfathers of ambient music, to record a quick song. Radiohead recorded a song for him, Lucky, and that song became the type of song that Thom Yorke, the front man, wanted his next album to be about. So, the next album was prepared to do a complete 180, and soon, Radiohead released OK Computer in 1997. Despite low predicted sales, due to its heavy electronic influence, OK Computer became a smash hit, and to this day is considered one of the best albums of all time. So, let's talk about OK Computer by Radiohead. OK Computer is, as a whole, focused on a couple things. Mainly, the album focuses on modernization. It focuses on how bleak the 21st century is going to be, full of robotic undertones. Each track on this album is heavily focused on the future, and usually has very abstract lyrics describing general malaise and confusion. As for how it achieves this, I'm going to look at each track and try to identify how exactly this album supports itself. 1. Airbag. The immediate thing to note about OK Computer is that most of the songs are very downbeat and electronic. A lot of them use sampling and unusual instruments to make their point. Airbag prepares you for the overall idea behind OK Computer, featuring a sampled drum part derived from a couple of seconds of actual drumming, sleigh bells, and a warped synthesizer toward the end. Overall, it creates a very compelling song that's driven by the groove and the stop-start of a bass line. Another immediate thing to note about OK Computer is the more abstract lyrics. These lyrics seem to be describing a person who believes that their life was changed from surviving a car crash due to an airbag. However, who can say? These lyrics aren't exactly concrete, and they can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Thom Yorke is invoking the idea of Bob Dylan with some of these lines, abstract lyrics with a shiftable meaning behind them. While a big part of Britpop and grunge, both trends that preceded OK Computer, Radiohead is clearly doing something different with them. They want to invoke a sense of confusion, and OK Computer masterfully does that. As far as openers go, Abstract is very instrumental in setting up the ideas behind OK Computer, which will continue existing throughout the album. Another immediate thing to note about OK Computer is the more abstract lyrics. These lyrics seem to be describing a person who believes that their life was changed from surviving a car crash due to an airbag. However, who can say? These lyrics aren't exactly concrete, and they can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Thom Yorke is invoking the idea of Bob Dylan with some of these lines. Abstract lyrics with a shiftable meaning behind them. While a big part of Britpop and grunge, both trends that preceded OK Computer, Radiohead is doing something different with them. They want to invoke a sense of confusion, and OK Computer masterfully does that. As far as openers go, Airbag is pretty instrumental in setting up the ideas behind OK Computer, which will continue existing throughout the album. 2. Paranoid Android. This song was one of the singles released for OK Computer, and with it eschews normal conventions of songwriting. Instead, it borrows the structure from songs such as Bohemian Rhapsody, and created 4 distinct sections of Paranoid Android. The structure would later be used for songs such as Jesus of Suburbia, forgoing a verse-chorus structure in favor of something more inspired by progressive rock. The first part is what I'd call the intro. This part is led by an acoustic guitar section played beside a simple drum part. The lyrics in this section seem to imply a feeling of overstimulation, of a constantly electronic world never shutting up. Our protagonist can't handle the world around him, so he lashes out at everyone around him. The overstimulation eventually gets to him, and the song slowly builds up until it absolutely explodes approximately 2 minutes and 45 seconds in. This leads into the rock section. This is a brief section driven by electronic guitar and mighty vocals. This section consists of our protagonist becoming a victim to overstimulation. He gets angry and starts to go berserk. The lyrics to this section consist of the protagonist shouting about somebody not remembering his name, them not remembering anything he did to please the regime the world had put in place. At about 3 minutes, all this pent-up energy is released into a guitar solo that gives us one of the heaviest moments on the album. The changing time signatures and piercing electric guitar tone represent the overstimulation reaching its absolute limit. At about 3.5 minutes in, all the tension is released as our protagonist takes solace in one of his interests, and the song decays into what I'd call the ballad section. This song enters a halftime beat with choral voices in the back as the protagonist calms down to an entranced state. The lyrics describe an almost meditative feeling where the protagonist just accepts that overstimulation will happen sometimes. However, underneath the tranquil ballad section, the lyrics still devolve into cursing and spitting at the world again. It exemplifies that the world will never go away, even when in a meditative trance. While this is the longest section of the song, it's only section 3. As a response to this realization that the world will never change, the song starts to pick up again for the outro section, approximately 5 minutes and 40 seconds in. This part is driven by electric guitar again, and the overstimulation shows up again. While this section doesn't add to the narrative through more lyrics, the growls in the back add to the narrative by exemplifying their protagonist is angry about the fact that the world never changes. Thus the overstimulation begins again, and it repeats in a ruthless cycle. As a person with autism spectrum disorder, this narrative, as mentioned, the lyrics are abstract and it can mean something else to you, really resonates with me. The overstimulation, the stages of it, and how each stage is represented is unmatched, and the instrumentation is really well done as well. In terms of auditory storytelling and instrumentation, this is my favorite song on the album. However, it isn't my favorite song on the album. Put a pin in that, we'll come to that later. The Subterranean Homesick Alien. Taking its name from Subterranean Homesick Blues by Bob Dylan, Subterranean Homesick Alien carries with it an ambient atmospheric feel. There's a lot of space in this song, and the slight organ in the back adds to the ambient feel. A little later on, a few synthesizer effects are added in, which only add to the ambience even more.
Up above, aliens hover, making home movies for the folks back home. Of all these weird creatures who lock up their spirit
lyrics follow a normal guy on his normal day. This is a perfectly normal town until it's mentioned that above the town, aliens constantly fly. The protagonist of the song says that since everyday life is so boring, he'd love to just meet the aliens for a day. The aliens eventually end up abducting him, and he muses on how fantastic the experience is before realizing that he's just going to sound crazy to his normal neighbors in the normal town. This is a song that tries to fight against complacency. This guy wants to be more than a normal guy, but can't because his town is so uptight and creatures of habit. It's an interesting and ambient song, and one that I enjoy listening to. 4. Exit music for a film. This is a very dreary song with an almost droning feel to it. It's led by an acoustic guitar strumming a couple chords, and as the song goes on, more effects and instrumentation are added to it. First there's a choral voices, and the cacophony as the drums kick in, eventually leading to a full-on explosion in tension. Exit music for a film is a very simple song lyrically, merely telling the story of Romeo and Juliet and their utter dissatisfaction with the houses, to the point of wishing they'd die and leave them be forever. However, the droning production and soaring vocals elevate this beyond the normal reading of the story. It really highlights the fact that Romeo and Juliet could just be bitter, loving each other just despite the outdated two-house system. This song is very enjoyable, and it's also somewhat frightening, highlighting a song theme that'll appear throughout the album. A lot of these songs are kind of scary, and that really enhances the idea of a bad future that Radiohead is going for. 5. Let Down. This song is driven by a pretty simple clean guitar part and a very catchy drum part that's very tom-heavy. The energy stays the same throughout most of the song, a slightly uplifting but meandering sound. This song is bringing back the ideas from Subterranean Homesick Alien. The lyrics show us the same discontentment with the way the world works. The protagonist laments about how the world constantly beats him down, likening himself to a bug being crushed by the system. While the lyricism is good and all, I have a hard time connecting to the song at points because the instrumentation is very post-grunge in how it comes across. Very slow, very happy yet unclear, and drum parts that are radio-ready versions of grunge ones. It's an alright song, but not my favorite. 6. Karma Police. This is another one led by an acoustic guitar. However, this one, while in halftime, is driven forward by the steady drum beat and the throbbing bass line. There's also hints of piano and choral vocals at certain parts. This song is also notable for the way it ends, by essentially ending with a scratchy, almost alarm-like noise that eventually takes over the entire mix and fades into what sounds like a speaker blowing up. This song describes a predatory group known as the Karma Police, who go after people who they think deserves it so they get their, well, karma. However, these are very inconsequential things, and even a bit weird at points, such as a guy who talks in maths. However, something is particular, because at the end, Tom York mentions to forgive him because he lost himself. This implies that these predatory Karma Police aren't actually a serious group at all. In fact, it seems like these Karma Police are inside us all, and we all go after other people for inconsequential things so we can feel like we're giving people what they deserve. This seems to tie into the bad future idea, as these Karma Police are just going to rear their ugly heads because we, as a human species, like trying to serve people what we think their just desserts are. In recent times, with the rise of cancel culture, this song seems to ring true for those who get canceled due to a lack of evidence and or for inconsequential reasons. We're all part of the karma police, and they're inside all of us. A very good song and an apt choice for a single to this album. 7. Fitter, Happier. This song is incredibly unique. To talk about Fitter, Happier, I first need to describe what musique concrète is. Musique concrète, literally concrete music, is one of the earliest forms of electronic music. It came about in the mid-40s as a consequence of the rise of the synthesizer. The synthesizer would allow samples to be saved and stitched together in an old form of sampling, and several underground artists would start to experiment with these ideas. These artists would take a ton of samples and stitch them together into a sound collage that would be meant to portray some emotion or whatnot. This form of art would come to notoriety in 1968 with the Beatles' White Album. A song appeared on that album called Revolution 9, which was a 9-minute sound collage stitched together by John Lennon, George Harrison, and Yoko Ono. The song was meant to portray the sounds of a revolution, and used musique concrète to do it. Revolution 9 remains to this day one of the most divisive Beatles songs. However, it cannot be understated just how important that song was to electronic music and more obscure genres like dark ambient. It showed the power of sampling and combining these samples into something coherent. That brings us to Fitter, Happier, which was allegedly banged out by Tom York in a few minutes to cure writer's block. Tom York merely wrote a bunch of 90s corporate slogans on a piece of paper and had them all read by a text-to-speech assistant over a sound collage, and the result is one of the most terrifying, bone-chilling songs I've ever heard. As a word of warning, this is not for the faint of heart. Skip about 20 seconds if you want to hear none of it.
Fitter, happier, more productive, comfortable, not drinking too much, regular exercise at the gym, 3 days a week, getting on better with your associate employee contemporaries, at ease, eating well, no more microwave dinners and saturated fats, a patient better driver, a safer car, baby smiling in backseat, sleeping well, no bad dreams, no paranoia, careful to all animals.
The effects in the back, the dreary piano, the people who sound like they're preparing you for a crash landing, the desolate strings, and the monotonous voice reading out every single line. It's also robotic, so synthesized. The lines are a bunch of slogans, a collection of 90s pop culture. But what it turns out to be is an absolutely terrifying look of complacency. You are the text-to-speech voice taking in every single corporate thing around you as part of your robotic routine. A routine that has been drilled into you by society. A routine that's supposed to make you feel fitter, happier, and healthier. However, the way it's all read, it emphasizes a bad future, distance where you're consumed by the corporatism of the world. It pulls no punches in its presentation. This is draining you of all your life and livelihood, all for what you're told is the greater good. Fitter, Happier is not only the best song on OK Computer, but one of the best pieces of art I've ever consumed. 8. Electioneering. This song is one of the most straightforward classic rock type songs on this album. It's driven by a catchy guitar riff and a swung beat that makes heavy use of the cowbell. It all ends with a guitar solo. Overall, it's definitely a tonal shift from the previous song, being incredibly perky and less intense than Fitter, Happier. This song is a very simple one when it comes to the lyricism, significantly less abstract than the rest of the album. This song is basically what you'd get if you took a politician's campaign speech and said what they actually meant. This song makes a lot of allusions to famous political acts, such as Reagan's voodoo economics, and stating that it's business as usual. The politician in the song promises to eventually meet the voter on the issues that they actually voted the politician for, making it very clear that he's never going to change. It's an interesting song about political malaise, and how politicians have been pandering to the people with no intent to actually make those promises a reality. It's a very catchy song, and a very good one as well. 9. Climbing Up the Walls. This song returns to the slower, downbeat sound that OK Computer had before the last two songs. The guitars screech and the drums play a simple pattern on a snare that's been turned off. It slowly and consistently builds up throughout the song. The drums get more complicated and the guitars add a little more effect.
It's always best when the light is off. It's always better on the outside.
instrumentation really portrays the feeling of something unsettling very well. This ties nicely in with the lyrics, which are sung from the perspective of something so utterly inhuman that it is always following you and always there. It can be assumed in one reading of this song that this creature is you, broken down and animalized by corporatism. The animal version of you follows you around, always lurking, just waiting for the chance to strike. It is assumed that it gets you, as the final things that resemble words are a blood-curdling screech as the song breaks down into nothing but ambience, with absolutely none of the prior build-up. It's a great song and rivals Fitter Happier and Pure Nightmare Fuel, but it doesn't quite reach that level of creepiness. 10. No Surprises. This song is one of the most succinct collectors of the entire album's themes. It sounds almost like a lullaby, but one of those lullabies that have gotten a little bit of a sadder tone behind them. It's a simple acoustic guitar pattern that's complemented with a simple drum part and glockenspiel going on in the background. It's almost like you're about to fall asleep while listening to it, but there's something preventing you from feeling completely at peace. It's remarkably melancholic and longing. Really show this melancholic quality. It's accumulation of all the themes in this album, corporatism, political malaise, and the idea of a bad future strung together in a song that sounds like the general feeling of being trapped in routine and wanting a better life, but being unable to get out. The lyrics not only show this, but show the fact that the protagonist willingly accepts this because he wants a quiet life with no surprises. He'd rather be stuck under corporatism than be alarmed at every turn. It's a song that shows that blind acceptance doesn't necessarily mean everything is fine. It's a very good song and one of the best penultimate songs for OK Computer. 11. Lucky. This song is once again a slower, downbeat song. All it is basically Tom York's vocal and a clean guitar pattern over a droning bass line and some synthesizer effects in the back. However, it doesn't stay like this, and the drums kick in full gear for the chorus. The lyrics of the song show the protagonist of it finally being happy because he was lucky and managed to dodge his responsibilities of this bad future. While he's happy, he fully notes that his luck might not be all it's cracked up to be. It shows a looming power, the corporatism and government looming above our protagonist's head. He's paranoid that this happiness won't last, and even says that the very act of him being lucky is barely hanging on the edge. It's a good song and portrays its feelings very well. 12. The Tourist. The final song on OK Computer. This song has a very staggered feel to it. It's swung, but it's so slow that it hardly feels like it's swung at all. The song is led by clean guitars and a very sparse production. While the drums do kick in as the song progresses, the same idea of the staggered feel continues, though the sparseness doesn't last. This final song portrays a sentiment of running away from responsibility. The protagonist thinks of himself as a tourist, and that he needs to be on his way now. There isn't much else to the song. The lyrics continue portraying a person running away from their problems even when told to slow down. This isn't the best song instrumentally to end out the album, but the lyrics portraying a sense of running away nicely brings the album to a close. Outro. OK Computer is a singularly unique album. Universally praised in 1997 as it is now, this album truly makes good on its themes and then some, The themes of rampant corporatism, political malaise, and an overall bad future show up in this album again and again, and this album does them very well. So, does OK Computer deserve to be legendary? Absolutely. An album that caused the death of Britpop, an ushering in of post-grunge and post-Britpop, and an album that has been called art as much as music, deserves to be legendary. This album truly exemplifies all of the themes it went for and is well deserving of its status as one of the best albums of all time. OK Computer is a legendary album. This has been Erinn Rose, and good night.